we're getting the details of that attack, but it was an ambush, and it's just, I have to tell you, it's just vivid and just horrific what went down. But when you look at, what's been going on in that area, post 2023, the Farragut West area towards that park was definitely a place that was a focus for crime prevention, because you did have a lot of unhoused individuals down there. There was a lot of violence in that area, potentially at night. And, the National Guard troops were stationed, from my experience going down there through Farragut West and through Farragut North stations, on the red and I think it's the red and the blue lines, respectively. And they are there in those, I would call them the corridors near the escalators go down towards the train to take your metro, is that they are there just to make sure there isn't any issues or there's any fights or there's any violence that takes place for riders as they come out of the escalator and go about their day. And they've been stationed outside Farragut West a lot, Chinatown Station as well, Gallery Place, as well as Farragut North in a smaller capacity. But they are out there because it is a downtown area, it's a business district, and there is a potential, potential violence that could take place, again, based on 2023 data and history as well. This is just truly just a tragedy. Again, it's not just about my office being there, but it's just about, how packed it is and how, what people witnessed down there today, whether you were driving, whether you were taking the train, whether you were, part of the National Guard team, whether you were, just going to a meeting across town or sitting in the park having lunch. What you had to witness there is just truly, just horrific. And it's the day before Thanksgiving, of course, a time of, renewal and gratitude. And we have families tonight of those National Guard troops that are going to be just in such trying to figure out in chaos what is going on. So I pray for them at this time. Sorry, it sounds so emotional, but
no, it's completely understandable. It was chaos down there.
From my vantage point, it's just why, why? And
I'm sure.
And, when we look at the overall case, there's, the reporting is still coming in. It's still, we're not sure 100%, but this individual that is the suspect at this time, they're saying potentially that he came in on a visa as part of the Afghan Allies program.
Year 2021.
Yep. 2021, when we had the withdrawal from Afghanistan, there was the chaos with that, and there was a lot of back and forth on having a lot of the allies that worked with us in Afghanistan, the translators, soldiers on the ground, to bring them to the States so they could be protected from reprisals from the Taliban. Potentially, this individual may have been a part of that, that program, and I guess, according to the reporting, again, this could change. His visa expired in September and had overstayed that visa. So, I hope that we get to the bottom of this, this process and this story of how this happened, because this is an act of terrorism, not just because of what happened and the brutality behind it and who it was targeting, but also where it was. It was very close to the White House. At one point, the White House was under a code red, which is, very, which is one of the highest levels you can basically have in terms of threat to safety and threat to life. It eventually got adjusted. I think it was to code orange, which is a highly likely instance of violence coming to that area. But I think how close it is, right in the center.
Yeah, the White House was locked down for several hours. So I do want to play, Tony, I want to play some sound from some witnesses from our team down there a little earlier today. So let's take a listen.
I was walking to lunch and it got to 17th and I Street, and we heard gunshots. So we ran about 4 or 5 storefronts down I Street. Then we kind of thought maybe it was construction. Then we heard another round of gunshots, probably 10 seconds later, maybe even less. So we ran a little bit further. Then, after that, a minute after that, a lot of people thought it was construction. So, a lot of security people were out in the street. So I went back to get my lunch and witnessed they had one person pinned down and yelling at him to stay down. And then there were 2 National Guards on the ground. One, it looked like they were trying to resuscitate. And then there were a couple of National Guard that were hugging each other that were obviously very upset about what had happened.
I heard boom, boom 2 times. And then the Uber driver said, "Why are all these people running?" So then I look out the window, and it's little children, adults running, children on both sides of the street, running in the opposite direction. The supervision is saying to the children, go, go, run. And then I heard help, help in the direction of the shooting.
Okay, so go ahead. So talk to me about what you saw when you got here.
When I arrived, there were still police cars coming in from all directions, and the ambulance was across the street. I saw the people take the gurney from the ambulance, go down the street, and in about 10 minutes they came back, and there was a body on that, and they, I don't know if it was alive or what, but put it in the ambulance, and they drove down the street, and that was it. And since then it's been massive reporters everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I have to ask you, and if you can speak up just a little bit, what goes through your mind when you hear that at least 2 National Guard members were shot right here in the nation's capital?
Oh my. Shooting anywhere is terrible, and shooting National Guard is also terrible. It's unfortunate that they're here, to be truthful with you, and that's maybe part of the problem. But still, not good, not admissible. Shooting is good.
So that was some of the witnesses earlier tonight, Tony, from some of our reporters down there. So obviously a lot of people getting off to their holiday weekend, a long holiday weekend, a lot of tourists in town, a lot of people just wrapping up their workday. Such a busy part of town. Obviously still a very active scene. You can see all of the police vehicles still down there, the crime tape. You see the camera moving right now. And this investigation won't be over anytime soon.
Absolutely not. And like the biggest thing, the through line that I heard from all of those, eyewitness accounts was people running in panic and, hearing those gunshots. And and those situations happen, throughout DC. Like, there's loud noises, it's construction going on, a lot of driving. And sometimes you hear loud noises and you go, oh, what is that, right? And in that moment, you might freeze, where it's like, okay, where am I going? Is this actually a gunshot or is it something else? And you have just like that, complete shock on top of the panic of watching people run from that area. Because again, Farragut West is a very heavily populated area. In the afternoon during, meetings time, again, 2:10, 2:15, this is when this awful situation happened. And, that's not rush hour, but it's a very big time. People are having lunches or business meetings, going in between office buildings on K Street and others. And this is just, again, the sheer panic is what I'm just hearing from so many people today, as, what they saw in the moments of that. And, the overall reporting is saying, again, this could again change. Again, I don't want to confirm 100% until we know the full picture. But these individuals were shot in the head. These National Guard troops were shot at close range. This was, and again, just an ambush attack in front of all these people. I mean, just the brutality of this and the trauma behind that, not just for, of course, for the National Guard members and their families and what they're going through, this just awful trauma, but the people that had to see this today.
Yeah.
I hate that I'm repeating myself sometimes. This is my first time really covering a story like this, and I'm praying for those troops tonight. And again, they're the process to bring 500 more troops potentially, as the president was saying, and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth was saying. I mean, this is just. I mean, what does this mean for the safety of our city if this is happening? Because these National Guard troops, they're not doing law enforcement activities.
Right.
In many ways,
they've been here to really work on that make them the DC beautiful again part of
in a lot of ways, and just kind of protect some of those kind of those metro buildings. Just to be, I would say kind of just to protect those perimeters, right? Again, I'm not in the military, I'm not in it, so I'm not going to use the language of that. But they're protecting that area, just just watching, kind of being a part of that high visibility thing that potentially prevent any actions from happening at the outset. And again, a lot of some violent crimes have happened inside those those stations, whether it be at Farragut West or Farragut North. And again, in my own personal case, I was attacked in 2022 outside of a station. On the red line. So that's why, again, like you've seen attacks like that. That's why, those troops are out there, as well as the increased Metro Police.
Tony, I want to get
too.
to some breaking news real quick. The president talking right now.
Whole order. He was flown in by the Biden administration in September 2021 on those infamous flights that everybody was talking about. Nobody knew who was coming in. Nobody knew anything about it. His status was extended under legislation signed by President Biden, a disastrous president, the worst in the history of our country. This attack underscores the single greatest national security threat facing our nation. The last administration let in 20 million unknown and unvetted foreigners from all over the world, from places that you don't want to even know about. No country can tolerate such a risk to our very survival. An example is Minnesota, where hundreds of thousands of Somalians are ripping off our country and ripping apart that once great state. Billions of dollars are lost, and gangs of Somalians come from a country that doesn't even have a government, no laws, no water, no military, no nothing. As their representatives in our country preach to us about our Constitution and how our country is no good. We're not going to put up with these kind of assaults on law and order by people who shouldn't even be in our country. We must now re-examine every single alien who has entered our country from Afghanistan under Biden, and we must take all necessary measures to ensure the removal of any alien from any country who does not belong here or add benefit to our country. If they can't love our country, we don't want them. America will never bend and never yield in the face of terror. And at the same time, we will not be deterred from the mission these service members were so nobly fulfilling. That is why tonight I can announce that I have directed the Department of War to mobilize an additional 500 troops to help protect our capital city. We will make America totally safe again, and we will bring the perpetrator of this barbaric attack to swift and certain justice if the bullets going in the opposite direction haven't already done that. During this time of the year, when we gather at home with loved ones, these two patriots were wearing the uniform of our country, patrolling the streets of our capital. They had taken a selfless oath to defend our nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that is exactly what they were doing when they were gunned down in a savage attack. I want to express my extraordinary gratitude to every member of the United States military who is deployed tonight, at home and abroad. I also want to thank the Secret Service and the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department for their work today. This Thanksgiving, I ask every family to say a prayer for the two great heroes who were so horribly shot, and for their loved ones. Please say a prayer. May God bless them and comfort them, and may God bless and protect the United States of America. Thank you and good night.
All right, so that was President Trump commenting on the shooting of two National Guard members earlier today. Those full comments on the White House YouTube page. But Tony, we just heard him reiterate his call for 500 more National Guard members coming here to Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I mean, again, when you look at the 500, I mean, that is a very massive number. And, you know, the question is going to be, what are the roles going to be for those extra 500 that are coming into the city? And especially, you know, again, is it going to be more, you know, patrols outside of similar areas, such as Farragut West Station or others? Will it be outside of, you know, major, major gatherings, such as, you know, Capital One Arena, for example, for games? Will you see a strategy for that? Will it be an extension of what's going on with some of the cleanup work in the city? I mean, the question is, what, you know, will those 500 additional personnel be used for? That's definitely a big question. And, you know, as well as, you know, again, you know, for the city, again, like this case that came up that is being appealed right now at the appeals level, where the legality of the National Guard deployment is being debated until December 11th. There's still that reprieve time for the appeals process from the administration to take place. The question is, how does this impact that? Is this going to be still all looped into that appeal that the administration is probably going to make, if they haven't already, to legally upstand the National Guard deployment and things of that nature? So it'll be a very interesting legal battle. Will this be part of that same appeal, or will it be a totally separate appeal? Because now it's a totally separate deployment potentially with this surge of 500 troops. And again, what is the impact going to be, as well as on kind of, again, what's the projects being done with this, as well as the impact of daily, civilian life and, the city and all that in terms of its function. So again, this is a very big development. And, again, like there's, of course, there's political rhetoric about, who let this person in and which program. And one of the things that I picked up on was, we're gonna analyze all people basically that were taken as part of this program for Afghan allies. And the question is, what impact does that have on those allies that were taken in 2021 during the Afghanistan withdrawal and the aftermath behind that? Because that was another big thing that I picked up on, is what does that mean logistically, for translators, for, soldiers, for folks that did, stand beside, our troops during Afghanistan and all those, all the wars throughout that time, and really helped keep our troops safe over there. And so the question is, what does that mean for them, and their families as well? Because again, this is such a complicated issue when it comes to the Afghan withdrawal and, the people that we did have, that we did have in the States because trying to free the Taliban, and they did work with the United States. That was viewed as treason with the new Taliban regime, and trying to keep those people safe. So again, this is definitely a very, a big breaking news story, but also a very complex situation when you balance the legality of this fight between the administration and the courts about the deployment itself, on top of what does this look like for the city with 500 new troops? What are their roles? And then you have this whole situation with the, Afghanistan program and the allies that came over here. Again, how does that process change? Is there a different vetting system? Is there, a whole renewal of it, or a refresh of it? Who knows?
Yeah. So we will stay on top of this like we always do. We'll have much more on this story coming up on Fox 5 News at 10, 11, and the Final Five. Josh Rosenthal and Nana Sentu Abanzu, both down there covering all aspects of this. And of course, we will have any new developments and any more press conferences as we get them. In the meantime, we are going to take a quick break. On the other side of that, Tony P is going to talk to us a little bit about his Thanksgiving travel. We're also going to find out what else he has been watching on this very busy and active Wednesday before Thanksgiving. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the Live Zone Primetime on this, what is it? It's a Wednesday night. I'm producer Chris here in the streaming pod, Tony P, live in Boston, Massachusetts. Tony, I want to hear all about your trip in just a second. First, though, let's talk about what else you have been watching today, shall we?
Yes, sir, absolutely. And again, we were keeping everybody in our thoughts and prayers, especially the National Guard troops during this time. But we will continue on with our rundown tonight. The final one before Thanksgiving. In Georgia, prosecutors dropped the state's 2020 election case against President Trump and his 14 co-defendants at the time, ending the last criminal proceeding tied to the 2020 election and fallout. The newly appointed state prosecutors said the case was unproductive. President Trump's allies hailed the move as a long-awaited victory. A federal appeals court has upheld nearly $1 million in sanctions against Donald Trump and his former attorney, Alina Habba, ruling their 2022 lawsuit against Hillary Clinton and James Comey was frivolous and an abuse of the courts. The suit had alleged and accused that Clinton, Comey, and others of fabricating the 2016 Russia allegations, but the judges said it lacked any legal merit. The penalty covers the legal fees of former Secretary Hillary Clinton, the DNC, and others, and it marks another major courtroom setback for President Trump, landing just days after the same court rejected his defamation case against CNN as well. In the corporate news world tonight, a high-level executive at Campbell's, Martin Bally, has been accused of racism in a lawsuit filed today. The complaint claims discriminatory behavior in hiring and promotion practices and could trigger widespread reviews of diversity and governance efforts across the food product sector. We can announce, too, as well, that Campbell's Soup has fired that employee as part of that horrible situation as well. International headlines tonight out of Hong Kong report that the death toll from the massive apartment tower fire has risen to 44, and 3 people have been arrested in connection with the blaze, including 2 residents and a building supervisor. Fire officials say the building lacked proper safety inspections at the time, and investigators are treating the case as possible criminal negligence as well. On the business front tonight, retailers are watching Gen Z closely this holiday season after a new survey from AT&T found younger shoppers are driving Black Friday and Cyber Week activity as we talk today. The data shows many Gen Z customers are favoring deals, resale items, and budget-friendly gifts rather than just splurging on newer items. Analysts say this reflects how younger Americans are reacting to inflation, job uncertainty, and tighter budgets overall, reshaping what holiday shopping may mean and look like in 2025. Also in business tonight, real estate marketplace data is showing that rising number of home sellers are quietly delisting their properties rather than lowering prices. Brokers say many are choosing to pull listings temporarily, hoping for stabilization in mortgage rates or a bounce back in buyer demand as opposed to just lowering the price in this cycle. In the entertainment world, season 34 of Dancing with the Stars ended last night with Robert Irwin and partner Whitney Carson winning the Mirror Ball Trophy after emotional performances and narrowly defeating the competition, including influencer Alex Earl and her team. And again, at the end of the ceremony, Robert Irwin, of course, dedicating the win to his late father, the great, legendary Steve Irwin. On social media tonight, the Wealthy Women of Rich Talk story is drawing new attention. The New York Post reports a group of affluent influencers posting luxury advice videos that many view as tone deaf. Critics are arguing their messaging masked real economic strain that their many followers have, while fans say that it's funny and potentially aspirational. The clips have sparked debates about privilege, responsibility, and influencer culture overall this week. And finally tonight, an uplifting human interest story from the Good News Network. A high school sophomore in New York used CPR skills that they learned in class to save their stepfather's life when he collapsed at home recently. They performed chest compressions for nearly 8 minutes until paramedics arrived. Doctors later said the quick action spared him serious brain damage. The family is calling them a hero and urging more schools to require CPR training throughout the grade levels. And that is the rundown for the final one before the Thanksgiving holiday.
Before the Thanksgiving holiday. Tony, we'll talk about your trip in just a little bit, but you mentioned holiday shopping season. Obviously, Black Friday right around the corner. As soon as you fill up on Thanksgiving, then we go right into shopping season. And coming up next, we're going to take a quick break, but coming up next, we have the perfect gift for the book lover in your life, because the author of the new real estate-based thriller from right here in Washington, D.C., is going to join us live. We're going to leave you with a little live picture.
This one.
A little live picture from Reagan National Airport on this very busy Wednesday before Thanksgiving. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Live Zone Primetime on this Wednesday night. I mentioned before the break that Black Friday is right around the corner, the holiday shopping season almost here, and if you're looking for the perfect gift for the book lover in your life, we may have just the thing. Best Offer Wins is the debut novel by DC author Marissa Cashno. It tells the story of a woman who goes to unhinged lengths to get her dream home, and the author was able to draw on her own real-life experiences as a real estate journalist right here in DC. So for more on the book, the inspiration, and more, Marissa now joins us live. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Live Zone Primetime tonight.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
First and foremost, I got to ask you how you know Jeff Gygax.
Oh gosh, that's a hilarious question. You know what? We go so far back that I couldn't even pinpoint the moment we met, but have mutual friends. And I think I've known him since I first, came to DC in like 2007. So gosh, I'm really dating both me and Jeff there. So sorry, Jeff, if you're listening.
That's okay. He knows. He knows. But first of all, thank you so much for joining us to talk all about this. And I mean, this is, to a certain extent, a very familiar premise to begin with. A couple living in DC, ready to upgrade from their cramped apartment, move out to the suburbs, they want to start a family, buy a house, and then it takes a turn. Up until that turn, I think a lot of people can relate to this.
Yeah, for better or worse, I do think it is a pretty relatable predicament. So yeah, the book is about a woman. Margot is the main character. And when we meet her at the beginning of the book, we learn that she has been stuck in this one-bedroom, teeny tiny apartment with her husband on U Street for almost 2 years, trying to buy the dream home in the suburbs. She's house hunting in Bethesda, and they've lost 11 bidding wars. She is growing increasingly desperate. She wants to start a family. She really feels like getting the dream home is the key to getting the rest of her life back on track. And so she gets a hot tip about a house that is not yet on the market, but it will be in a month. And so it's the perfect house, it's in the right neighborhood, it checks all the boxes, and she is determined to get this house before it hits the market and the masses can descend and outbid her once again. So it takes place right after the pandemic, when I'm sure many viewers will remember the market in this area and all over the country became even more heated than it already had been. So that's sort of the cutthroat environment that we're in. Margot, you'll learn, tends to have like an obsessive personality to begin with. So she is sort of just like the wrong buyer that's been pushed too far. So the novel, you're sort of inside her head. You have a front row seat for this psychological unraveling that she goes through trying to buy a house in this hot DC market without all cash, without parents who can, buy it for her. So yeah, I do think, I know that this is an experience that a lot of my friends have been through. And as you mentioned, I was a journalist covering this stuff for many years at Washingtonian magazine. So I heard about this stuff firsthand.
I would love to leverage some of the research that you've done as the journalist, at Washingtonian. This is so fascinating, and this is an incredible piece of literature. I want to say it's a very interesting culture that you're taking, a look at. Now, in your research, what did you find are some of the unique emotions or motivations that underline the buying culture, the real estate culture in DC compared to the other metropolitan areas?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think no matter where you are, if you're house hunting, it feels like the most important thing in your life. It's usually the most money anybody spends on anything. So already the financial stakes, could not be higher. I think that people tend to bring a lot of their own emotional baggage to kind of the definition of what a dream home is, whether they realize it or not. So when you're trying to buy a home, I think you're bringing all of that kind of emotional and psychological freight to the table too. So I think regardless of where you are, if you're in the middle of a house hunt, it does feel like this all-consuming thing. And yeah, and I guess if, setting it in DC, we do tend to have, I think, a high share of really ambitious individuals here who are willing to kind of go to extreme lengths. We have people who kind of fight tooth and nail in their day jobs, right? Mm-hmm. So of course you're going to bring, some of that to bear in your personal life too, especially when it comes to something as important as your home. So I do think the personality types that we have in the DC area are kind of a perfect fit for a novel like this one.
So
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, and obviously you had a wealth of experience as a real estate journalist here in DC to kind of draw from. But what were some of the most unhinged stories that you heard while you were covering the city's real estate market? And did any of them kind of creep into this narrative?
This narrative there's probably a lot of influence in it, but I can't say that there's one, there's not an anecdote that shows up word for word that comes from real life reporting. But certainly I did hear a lot of crazy stories, particularly during the pandemic and right after the pandemic. I wrote one cover story for Washingtonian, I think it was April 2021. So it was really in the dead heat of this crazy post-pandemic market when interest rates were, super low and everyone wanted to buy a house. And I wrote a cover story about this COVID housing boom. And in the course of reporting that, I heard dozens of crazy stories. I interviewed dozens of house hunters and real estate agents. I heard about open house lines that wrapped around the block multiple times. I heard about houses that were getting as many as 50 or 60 offers. It was normal at that point for houses to go for six figures above list price. You just sort of had to assume that the list price wasn't actually real and that you were going to have to spend $300,000 more than that, which is so absurd. I heard about one house that was so popular. It was in an upper Northwest DC neighborhood. And I'm assuming the homeowners weren't living there anymore, so which made this possible. But evidently the showing appointments during the regular daytime hours were getting booked solid so quickly that they started opening the house up overnight so people could make appointments to go see it in the middle of the night. So yeah, it was this really desperate moment, and I thought, it kind of shocked me when I decided to try writing fiction. I'd never written fiction before this book, so when I decided to try writing a thriller, it kind of stunned me that nobody had thought of this before, because it just seemed like kind of such low-hanging fruit almost to set a thriller, to have a desperate, obsessive protagonist willing to do whatever it takes in the heat of this incredible house hunt.
Yeah, and I can see this.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, I can see this becoming the next Ryan Murphy series. We've already got Kim Kardashian in this legal drama, All's Fair, before you know it. I mean, listen, real estate shows are red hot. Now you throw in this sort of, thriller aspect. It's a guarantee. And, kind of just related to that, like I said, a relatable thing. My wife and I lived in a one-bedroom apartment in Shaw at 9th and U, and then we decided we wanted to start a family, so then we went looking out in the suburbs of Montgomery County. We weren't necessarily going to buy, we just wanted to rent. We looked at one house, and the agent who was showing it said, put in your best offer for a rental. And we were like,
Wow.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Tony P., take it away.
Well, I was just going to say before we get too far, you mentioned TV shows, and the book has already been optioned and is in development at Hulu with Greta Lee attached, which is very exciting. And
Wow, congratulations.
Amazing. Congratulations.
I mean, I want to ask about, kind of when you look at these shows that have been coming on again, not only that, but the democratization of listings generally, where you see all the online websites, all the Instagram pages, the influencers that do this, the real estate agents that are now online, they have their own personalities, right? And do you think that this democratization of the real estate space, do you think that kind of the reality TV angle to it is making these emotions run higher and make the competition for these listings be a little bit more intense, or is it just kind of a more coincidence opposed to actually a cause?
That's an interesting point. I think that's really observant, actually. I mean, I will say the market right now has cooled considerably, at least in our area. But I will say, I do think that there is something to what you're saying, Tony. I mean, the fact that people are looking on Instagram all day long at, kind of beautiful decor accounts, or watching these, $1 million listing type reality shows where you're inside these gorgeous dream homes, I do think it kind of amps up this, sort of perception of what's worth striving for and kind of what the dream home is. And certainly in the book, Margot has this very kind of Instagram perfect idea of what a dream life is that she's really desperate to achieve for herself. And it's, harder to come by than she would like it to be. So I do think that, scrolling Instagram, scrolling Pinterest, there's even a scene in the book where she gets a little tipsy at home and she gets on Pinterest and starts designing. She's so determined to get this home, even though she hasn't bought it yet. She starts kind of putting together the mood board for how she's going to furnish it. She might even order a few things, even though she doesn't actually have the house yet. So yeah, I do think that this sort of, what you call the democratization of real estate and design, it does sort of lend itself to people going down these rabbit holes, I think, and kind of fantasizing maybe more than they did before.
Yeah, that's all I do when I go on Redfin or Zillow.
Not just Tony.
I could be the part 2 of this.
Yeah, maybe. That's not a bad idea.
So you mentioned this was the first time you wrote fiction, and it was just named GMA's December Book Club pick. So how does that feel?
Oh, wild. So, I mean, this whole thing has been totally wild. This was a thing I did. I wrote it for myself, really, just just for fun. I did not expect it to turn into a GMA book club pick. I did not expect any of this, but it is extremely exciting, and I just feel so grateful for it.
And when you wrote this, you decided to do your first, fictional novel, and you had this, great journalistic background. What are some of the things that you took from journalism to make sure that you wrote this in the way that you wanted to? And what are some of the things that you learned that when writing fiction or realistic fiction differs from the journalistic process?
Well, I will say the best difference is that you are not beholden to facts. I mean, it was after, nearly, again, dating myself, after nearly 20 years as a journalist, to make up a story felt so liberating and so fun. I think one of the good things that I took from journalism is like this real determination to get the book done. I mean, as I mentioned a minute ago, I was sort of stunned that nobody else had done this book already, and I became very paranoid that somebody else was absolutely writing the exact same novel. So I was kind of terrified of getting scooped, which meant that I wrote the first draft pretty quickly and was able to kind of figure out that I had a real idea there pretty quickly, and I was very excited about it. So, yeah, I think I'll give journalism credit for that. And I do think, having been a narrative magazine writer for so long at Washingtonian, when you're writing long form magazine pieces, you are kind of thinking about story structure and keeping a reader sort of engaged until the end and, building the tension and all of those things. And I was very pleasantly surprised to see that those skills were applicable to novel writing too.
So Marissa, if people want to follow you for more details, they want to get a copy of the book, how can they do that?
Well, you can follow me on Instagram I'm just at Marissa Cascino. And you can find the book wherever you get books. So I would recommend your local indie bookseller, but also Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you normally go for your books.
All right, Marissa Cascino, thanks for spending some time with us tonight here on the Live Zone Primetime. Have a happy Thanksgiving. And again, thank you so much for your patience.
Same to you, of course. Thank you so much.
All right, we're going to
take care.
Back up to New York, that live picture of the Christmas tree that we love so much. We're going to take one more quick break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the Live Zone Primetime on this Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I'm still here in Bethesda, Maryland, Fox 5 DC, streaming pod as it's known, Tony P up there in Boston, Massachusetts. Tony P, I want to hear a little bit more about your non-trains, planes, and automobiles trip.
You saw the caption. I love it.
I did.
I'd say that's how committed you are as my partner in crime here. Absolutely love it. Also, I didn't know we called the Fox 5 streaming pod. Now I learned something new today.
So that's what you've heard me use the phrase spod, Tony? It's a conglomeration.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a portmanteau, if you will, I believe. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but it's the streaming pod, hence the spod.
Exactly. No, but I mean, today was so fascinating because this is my first time ever traveling on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Usually when I was working in the corporate world and even up to last year, I would be traveling Tuesday or even Monday of that week and just work remotely, right? But this year I decided, hey, I'll travel on a Wednesday so we could do, only one show with the little test here with our, graphics and all that. And I'm like, okay, this is gonna be interesting. Maybe it's gonna be kind of packed in there. It'll be kind of like Home Alone running through the airport, right? Planes, trains, and automobiles like Steve Martin. I'll have my coat with all the water and the mud on it at the end of the day, and I'll be absolutely livid at the rental car clerk. Who knows, right? But when I got there, and I made sure that I had gotten to the airport about an hour and 45 minutes before my flight, because I know DCA is quick. I mean, you can get through. I have the clear service, so I get to pretty close to the front of the line. And I was expecting I'm going to need that today. When I got to the airport, I got up the yellow line at the DCA stop, and I could see like there was some traffic outside with the cars, and like there was people getting picked up and dropped up. I'm like, oh God, this is going to be maybe a little bit more dicey. When I got in there, as you see, nothing. The lines were the same as they were when I would take the Friday at 5 p.m. flight out of DCA to go back to Boston for a weekend. No joke. I mean, it was unbelievable watching this. And then seeing, the overall terminals, like it wasn't crazy. There wasn't a lot of, banter or back and forth yelling like you kind of hear about all these horror stories in the airports. None of that was happening. There weren't even, like the line at Duncan, and there's two of them in that terminal. I think it's Terminal B. The lines were like mid at best. And the only real chaos was trying to figure out which iced coffees were getting made and which ones were the correct ones. That was the only chaos that I saw that entire time. And it shocked me. But also, it goes to show you how efficient DCA is, and it's why we see members of Congress, regular citizens, advocating for more flights to come out of there because it's quick. It's close to DC and the overall, I would say, the interior DMV region. And then you see when you get there, it's pretty efficient. I didn't even need clear TSA Plus. I could have just went there by myself with my passport, and I would have been okay.
Now,
so overall, it was nuts, and I was so shocked by it. Like I kind of felt like it was a dud a little bit. I wanted to see some action, but nothing happened.
Tony P., do you think it has something to do with the fact that so many people have the option to work remotely, like you're doing right now? And they don't have to wait until the last minute to leave. They can work, they can fly home on last Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Right. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, again, for families, I don't know how many days you want to have your loved one there, especially if it's the crazy uncle. I don't know if you want to have them there for 4 or 5 more days.
Fair, very fair.
I think you're totally right. I think especially for shorter flights, and DCA is mainly, and not mainly, I think it is solely a domestic airport. And, we're seeing today, I mean, the most delays we're coming out of was mostly the O'Hare, Chicago area. And again, that's more of a, it's a larger metropolitan area. You see a lot of folks coming in from the East Coast, and the distances are a little bit different. I think overall with how that airport works, it's a lot of East Coast up and down, so maybe those flights are quicker. It's a little bit more of the same routine. Maybe that's how it's more efficient. The other thing that I would look at is the effect of the shutdown. This might be just kind of a really wide analysis here, but we had weeks of the shutdown up until the beginning of November. A lot of folks probably booked their flights potentially with the shutdown in mind. They may have, not just booked flights, but booked trains.
Yeah.
Maybe for shorter distances, did a rental car or a bus or something of that nature. Maybe this year, because of the shutdown, there was a little bit more hesitancy from people to fly this year, so more maybe drove.
Yeah, a lot of people driving. I think 90% of the 81 million people who are hitting the roads, the rails, the planes, are planning on driving, which stresses me out for Sunday on my way back from New York and Philadelphia back down to Washington, D.C., because as you know, that 95 corridor, wish me luck, Tony P.
That GW Bridge, I'll tell you, New Jersey, they have a lot of really good rest stops. They have some great options to eat there.
Named after famous,
advantage of all of them.
Named after famous New Jersey natives like John Bon Jovi.
James Gandolfini, the absolute legend that is Tony Soprano, and was the inspiration behind, I think, my family's Thanksgiving. It's going to have the sauce and the man of God.
Tony, how's the weather up? How's the weather up there in Boston?
I'll tell you right now, it was actually a pretty solid day. The high was 59 today. So again, we saw it in
not
DC.
Too shabby.
I think it was like 70.
Yeah,
not too
it
bad
was.
And again, I had a little bit of time to drive around today, see some family. It was very, very nice. We had the windows down coming into Boston. So overall, like a very, very nice day. And even tonight, like I think, let me check my radar here. It is
Well,
still 55 degrees.
I just popped up the 7-day here, and things took a dramatic turn outside. I was
know.
actually watching some of our live shots from our reporters earlier tonight before this show, and you could see and hear the wind whipping out there. And as you just saw, it dropped down to the 40s, I believe. Now we're taking a look at some of the storms that could be setting up over parts of the East Coast coming up over the weekend. I think our team's still working on that, so I'm going to come back to us in the meantime, Tony P. But yeah,
Whiplash.
some
Okay, Mike Thomas
big
is very proud of
changes.
you. Very proud of you for that. That was well done, my
Well,
friend. That was
thank you very
beautiful.
much. I, on the other hand, I showed up to work in nothing but just the shirt I have on underneath here, and I think it's going to be a little bit chillier on my way home, to be honest with you.
On the bike. I mean, that's
No, I drove in. I knew better.
Oh.
I'll tell you why I knew better, Tony P, because tonight is also, as you know, for some people who tend to celebrate, a lot of people are home and they like to throw a few back.
Yes.
On the
and
Wednesday
relive the glory
before
days a little
Thanksgiving.
bit.
So I opted for the car tonight.
That's a very good call. I mean, that's very good thinking because, again, this is the night where you see a lot of DUIs and a lot of injury because of driving. And I'll tell you, I mean, there are creators.
Don't drink and
Tyler
drive.
Cameron.
Drive
Yeah.
safe. That you heard it here first on the live Zone Primetime from Tony P.
And Tyler Cameron just posted that. He did a whole little PSA announcement on his page. He's a friend and a really good human being. He was like, please call somebody, call an Uber. He said, call me. It's like, I'll come pick you up in Broward County, Florida. So, it's a great night to get together with friends, have some fun. The content that's going on online right now, some of the memes about the high school jock that peaked in high school coming back to the Thanksgiving reunion, just some of the great content. And it's a really wonderful night. Just please be safe. And again, if you have to drive, be very careful, stay under the limit, of course, and just drink very responsibly because this is, again, people are out late. The roads, again, with this change in temperature, you could see
Tony P,
some potential conditions.
Tony P, we're down to our final 2 minutes, though. I want, before we get into wishing each other a happy Thanksgiving, so you're not going to be back in here on Monday. If you don't mind me putting you on the spot, talk to people about where you'll be coming to us from the next time we see you live.
So we go from Boston to Brussels, Belgium. I'm going to Belgium for 3 days, and then I'll be in Rome for 3 days in Italy, my homeland. My two grandfathers will be very, very proud of that. And I'll tell you, it's going to be a really cool trip. I'm going with NATO and the European Union, doing some work with them overseas, and really excited. It's my first time out of the country. So it's a lot of adjustment, and you'll be seeing some cool banners for the next couple of, I'd say next 5-6 days.
Well, we expect a lot of great pictures as well, so that each night you can give us a recap of what you did that day. So we're really looking forward to it. We really appreciate you continuing to zoom in and join us each night live. But before you hit the road for your international adventures, have a wonderful Thanksgiving at home with your family. I'm grateful that we have gotten the chance to work together and get to know each other over the last several months. So have a wonderful time and come back to us soon.
Chris, I cannot wait. Thank you, my friend. I'm so grateful to have you as a partner in crime. It taught me so much.
I appreciate it.
And happy Thanksgiving.
You too, and to all the poll carries out there celebrating with Tony P. And to everyone watching, you have a happy Thanksgiving as well, a safe Thanksgiving. We are going to leave you with another live picture at the big story we have been following all night long out in downtown DC. This was that tragic shooting of 2 National Guard members. We'll have much more on this story coming up right at the top of the hour, right here on Fox Local and on Fox 5 News. Have a great rest of your evening. We'll see you next time. Tony P, you're clear.